We appreciate everyone attending our council meeting here today. We've got a full agenda and a room full. So we will get started. I'm going to officially call us to order. And I would ask that everyone please rise for the prayer, and then we'll follow up with the flags. So invocation by Jeremy File.
Thank you. Father, we thank you for this day, another day to honor you and to do your will. Lord, I pray right now for wisdom dealing with every situation and circumstance here in this meeting today. I thank you for strength with every one of our city leaders to do what pleases you. Give them eyes that see and ears to hear what you're saying, and I pray in Jesus' name God's will be done in Amarillo, Texas. I thank you these city leaders will continue to rise up and be who you called them to be. Thank you that they will follow what you've appointed them to do, confronting evil, helping those that are doing good. I pray for a smooth meeting today and that there'll be a spirit of unity in this house. We thank you for all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. If you guys will join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll do the Texas flag as well. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you guys so much. Please be seated. Okay, it says proclamation, the city secretary. I did not see one. Did we have one that we've printed?
Got one for environmental health, and let me go grab that.
Okay. And then do we have the entire environmental health team here today, or do we have just the majority? We got the whole team. Fantastic. So while she grabs that, we're going to come down there. If you guys would, I know we're not shy on photo opportunities. We're going to have every one of y'all come up here and line up, and we'll join you. Anybody want to read environmental health?
I will say this right here is my thing. BCN or VNC.
All right. Whereas the health and well-being of Amarillo, Texas and its residents are intrinsically linked to the condition of our local environment, and the protection of our air, water, soil, and the unique High Plains ecosystem is vital to sustaining a high quality of life in our community. And whereas environmental health is a critical component of public health and promoting environmental justice, food safety and security, wastewater management, and conservation efforts is essential for ensuring a healthy and prosperous future for all Amarillians. And whereas the state of our environment directly impacts the well-being of all living organisms in addressing issues such as vector-borne disease control, sanitary nuisances, and toxic exposure is key to reducing disease burdens and improving the quality of life both in Amarillo and beyond. And whereas it is our collective duty to educate, inspire, and mobilize the citizens of Amarillo to take meaningful actions that preserve and enhance the health of our environment for present and future generations. And whereas the city of Amarillo is supported by a dedicated team of professionals committed to reducing foodborne, waterborne, and vector-borne illnesses throughout the Amarillo area through various environmental health programs with a strong emphasis on education and community partnerships. And now, therefore, we, Mayor and City Council members of the City of Amarillo, Texas, do hereby proclaim September 26, 2024 as World Environmental Health Day.
Good afternoon. Just wanted to say real quick, these men and women behind us here today work extremely hard for the citizens of Amarillo and the surrounding communities, and I'm so very grateful to have them here, and I'm proud of them. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for recognizing their hard work through this proclamation. I appreciate it.
Let's get a photo.
That's rich. No internet. And I think I should drop our presentation over onto my flash drive. Desktop. No, well, I mean, like, a few months ago.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. I better go back to work because I feel like y'all are. Yeah. Think that'll win yourself? In fact, that's a hazard.
Especially seeing it the first time.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have officially proclaimed, and so 5A is complete. We will now move on to item 6A. Do I have any announcements from the staff? Anything that you need, Mr. Path? Okay, any announcements from council? All good. We will move on to public comment. Here in just a minute, Ms. Stephanie Coggins is going to read us into public comment. It looks like we probably have several here today. So if you've signed up, we'll go in order. If you haven't signed up, we'll allow you to raise your hand and let us know if you want to come and speak. You can make public comment on any city business here today. So we are getting closer. And once again, appreciate your patience. We're almost there.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for participating in today's City Council meeting. Your input and your opinions are important to us, and we're glad that you're here to share them with us today. At each posted meeting, we invite our fellow community members to address City Council regarding posted agenda items and items related to city policy. Every speaker today will have 3 minutes to address the council. At the end of 2.5 minutes, you'll hear a warning beep alerting you that you have 30 seconds left to wrap up your thoughts. Speakers who speak on items that are not on today's agenda, please know that council is limited in how they can respond to you in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. They can share a statement of fact or policy. They can ask that your item be deferred to a future agenda, or they can refer you to staff to visit about your topic. When you come to the microphone today, please state your name and whether or not you live in the Amarillo city limits, and then state if you're speaking for, on, or against your agenda items, or share your thoughts. Please note, we have several public hearings today, and so if you are here to speak on a public hearing, we would ask that you speak either during that specific public hearing or during public comment, but not both, in order to help us keep accurate minutes. And it is your choice at which time you would like to speak. Okay. With that being said, we are starting today with Beth Duke, and on deck after Miss Duke will be Mike Fisher.
Afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. Mayor said I have the record for the heaviest handout, so I love that. I love that. Thank you for letting me give you a quick update on Center City of Amarillo. We are so grateful for the continuing support of the city and Center City Tiers for Center City, and we just keep working every day to make our historic neighborhood a bridge to a thriving future. I want to tell you about a few of our highlights from last year as we enter this new fiscal year. We continue to make downtown a destination. I think you've seen the beautiful new streetscape, which has added so much to frame our historic buildings. We achieved the 23rd annual recognition as a state and national Main Street city, and this means that we meet or exceed all the standards to be called a Main Street city. I'm really proud of that. I'm glad we're part of Main Street because every quarter we have to submit reinvestment reports. And for the annual cumulative year of 2023, Center City totaled $3.5 million in private investment, $33.5 million in public investment, $39 million in public-private partnerships, and $78 million total reinvestment. And this is exciting because since we joined the Main Street program, reinvestments have totaled almost $772 million, and this is for a district that was very flat before we adopted the strategic plan in 2008. With support from the City of Amarillo and Center City Tiers, Center City has invested more than $1.5 million in facade grants, and these are matching grants, so we know the owners have spent that or more to make their buildings beautiful. As you know, we sponsor many events we consider free and low cost to the community. The Electric Light Parade, High Noon on the Square, Jazztober starts next week with our weekly jazz concerts, Dine Downtown Week, a patriotic pep parade, and one you may not know about is quarterly Lunch and Learn luncheons with the Laura W. Bush Institute for Women's Health that bring women's health information downtown. We're also proud to co-sponsor the photo contest for the Coors Cowboy Club Cattle Drive. We promote historic preservation with an annual tour of historic buildings, and in May, we had 250 people tour our downtown buildings. Our hoofprint project that started with 100 fiberglass horses in 2002, we now have more than 130 in our herd. And even some of our new neighbors, like a certain convenience store on the eastern edge of our town, are interested in having a hoofprint horse to celebrate being part of Amarillo. Center City is proud to partner with Center City Tiers. I was down there at 6 a.m. Saturday morning watching those gateway arches. They're 24 years old. They could use a little powder coat, and they're going to get LED lights, and I think it's a great testament to welcoming people to downtown. We work every day to make downtown a showpiece for you, and we are so proud of the support and the partnership with Center City, the City of Amarillo, and the Center City Tiers, and all the citizens who are working hard to be proud of our Center City. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Miss Beth, we appreciate all you do. So you're an ambassador for us here. We love it. Keep going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Next is Mike Fisher, and after Mr. Fisher will be Sherry Ferguson.
I've got some info for you guys to.
Yep, bring her on up.
You have an extra one for the city manager.
Okay. I'll hand them out here.
All right. I'm Mike Fisher. I live in the city at 4410 Van Kristen. And that's what I'm here to talk about is my house. I know you guys are tired of the same tired argument or what I bring up here, but I got a new twist to it, and I think it's relevant. I received a notice for tall weeds at my house. My house is located directly to the east of Tide Dry Cleaners. I'm across the alley from that. And that's going to come into play here in a minute. But this tall weed notice is for on the south side of a brick wall, 6-foot brick wall that's on city-owned property. That brick wall is city-owned. It's on the other side of the survey marker. I have no access to this property from my property, but I receive a notice from the city saying I have to take care of this land. And if the city mowed that grass, they would have cones out in the street. They'd stop a whole lane of traffic. There's been 3 people killed within feet of my house from speeders. I'm not risking my life to mow this grass that the city came and pulled up political signs and said, I can't put signs on that property. XL tore up sprinklers that are connected to my property. And I said, now fix it. Several years later, and they said, nope, here's a legal notice. It's not your property. Those are your sprinklers, but that's not your property. So then I get a notice that the city went and mowed the property, and then they send me a bill. And now they're threatening to put a lien on my property. And so the city's enforced, this is uneven enforcement of rules, because on the other side of my property, across the alley, there's a construction of 3 different businesses that were crammed in there. And this isn't on you guys. It's previous councils, previous leadership. They were allowed to overlook numerous things. There's not enough parking for any retail business. If you take 3 retail businesses in there, the formula doesn't work for the parking spots. The sign codes have been butchered. There's illuminated signs that face my house. The rear, Cole, you're involved in construction. The rear yard that's required, a 10-foot space, whether it's grass or whatever it is, it must be directly viewable from 30 inches above the ground. So no parking lot, no anything, but there's parking spaces there. Even when there's an alley, and it's required when it's adjacent to residential property. So we're worried about these weeds, and you're going to put a lien on my property, but I still have a dry cleaning plant, a plant within 70 feet of my swimming pool. They're doing dry cleaning operations on site. That's a dry cleaning plant. And ask Andrew Freeman, I won't throw him under the bus, ask him what he said to me about that. And I'll throw him under the bus later if he doesn't admit to what he told me. I know my time's up, but if you'll give me about 30 more seconds. I would like for this to be put on an agenda so we can discuss this, so we can get this out of the way. Maybe I'll go away. Maybe you guys will have a good answer. Maybe I'll quit coming up here. And because this is the only, like Andrew Freeman said, the city invented Mike Fisher because they never said anything to me. No one ever said, what's your problem, dude? Nobody ever said, hey, man, I'll apologize for the city. This is our bad. Nobody did, but it's too late for that. And that's all they had to do. That may have been all they needed. I went to a meeting at the Randall County, and they let me talk and talk and talk, and they didn't cut me off like Ginger did. And it was unfinished, so I kept coming back, and I kept coming back because I never finished. They let me talk as long as until I shut up, and I never went back. I mean, just remember that when the next Mike Fisher comes up here. But I would like for this to give a fair shot, and for you guys to tell me why I'm a logical guy on a bunch of businesses. And if you can convince me that I'm wrong, I'll go away.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
All right.
Next is Sherry Ferguson.
Hi, Sherry Ferguson. I live in the city limits. I'm here today as the Executive Director of YLC Community Outreach, not anything else. I'm concerned about a consent agenda item, 9L, with Transformation Park. The language in it is really broad. It says no more financial and supportive services. I understand that that's your fiscal sponsorship for them is ending. That's great, but that's all normal. But I think the language is too broad, and I think that looks like y'all trying to get out the back door on an agreement with them in that. So if the language could be fixed to reflect that in the amendment to the MOU, I think it would look a lot better. I know optics is not your favorite word, Mayor, but
right.
There we are.
Thank you.
So the initial, when I looked at it, that's exactly what I thought until I could mull it over a little bit, and then I thought, oh, fiscal sponsorship is coming.
Ms. Ferguson, we'll be happy to pull that off for further discussion before we vote on it.
And then just while I'm here, Environmental Health Day, bear spray, and children. That doesn't fit together very well. That's not been addressed in a public forum. It probably should be. I know there's a lot of angst about it, and just y'all addressing it somehow would probably make a lot of that go away. So we'd sure like to hear about that. And
Thank you, ma'am.
that's it. Thanks.
Appreciate you.
Mayor, that's everyone I had signed up today.
Do I have anyone else here today that would like to offer public comment? Okay, seeing nobody, we'll go ahead and close that section of our agenda here. We'll move on to item 8A. Review of agenda items. Council, do you have anything that you need reviewed before we move on?
Is this for new items or agendas?
No, I'll request that at the end. This would just be anything on the current agenda that you had further questions on. All right, we're going to move on to item 8B. We have Miss Emily Kohler here, I believe. She's going to give us a presentation on safe streets and roads. Miss Kohler, how you doing today? Good.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity. The Planning Department is facilitating the Safe Streets and Roads for All plan. We're working with a Citizen Advisory Committee and a technical team from various departments and our external partners like AISD. We have a consultant that is facilitating most of the technical analysis for the plan, Goodman Corporation. They're based in Houston. Let's see, I do have some slides. Thank you. And so we're about halfway through the process. We have a few policy things we wanted to touch on and just make sure that you don't have any concerns and take any feedback that you might have today. So funding for the SS4A plan is the result of our work with the Normandy Group. They're our federal grants consultant. The city was awarded $240,000. It's a total $300,000 project in the FY 2022 round of grant funding. This is part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. There's a total of $5 billion that's been made available to communities for a 5-year period. And the SS4A approach, it's also sometimes referred to as Vision Zero, is the accepted national standard for significantly improving roadway safety by understanding and reducing crashes. The plan uses data analysis and community input to evaluate safety issues and then propose projects to improve those. And having an approved SS4A plan makes the city available to pursue funding for future construction projects. And we can also utilize other sources other than the SS4A program for these projects, like MPO or CIP. The main thing that I wanted to present today relates to the stated goals for the plan. I do this every time. It helps when it's on. So the plan has to meet 8 criteria to be approved and make us eligible to pursue future funding. And one of them relates to the official public commitment by the governing body. The commitment has to be to an eventual goal of 0 roadway fatalities or an ambitious percentage reduction that would eventually get the city there. So our Citizen Advisory Committee has recommended that we use a percentage decrease, and it isn't one that would eventually allow us to get to that Vision Zero, which would be pretty aggressive. And well, the way that it's written now is to reduce 35% of severe and fatal crashes by the year 2035. And so I think after what we learned during the city plan process, consulting with our other departments, that the Vision Zero goal isn't appropriate for Amarillo, and that it's an unlikely target for us. So our target means that as a result of the efforts of this plan, we would be working to reduce our annual fatal and severe crashes from our baseline year, which is 2021. So there were 166 fatal and severe crashes in 2021 to 110 per year by 2035. So this averages about 4 fewer fatal crashes. We think that this is a reasonable target and also doesn't use the terminology Vision Zero for Amarillo. And then we want to make sure that we state that this could potentially affect funding competitiveness in the future because we wouldn't be checking that box, but we would still meet all the other criteria that would make us eligible to continue to pursue funding. So we think this is a good solution for Amarillo. We want to make sure that you agree with that and we can proceed. So I mentioned that the plan consists basically of 2 components, studying the crash data and then extensive community involvement. So at this point, we have completed the crash analysis data, and this results in what is being called the high injury network. I'm just going to show a couple maps today. We have a full analysis of this that's available on the project's website. But the map that's on the screen now is showing the top corridors in Amarillo in which all roadway users are most likely to be fatally or severely injured. So the red, I'll just highlight the top 5. The most dangerous corridors in Amarillo include South Taylor Street between 8th and 12th, Southwest 10th and Southwest 11th between Harrison and Buchanan. So these are all downtown. And then Bell Street between 33rd and 37th. And then there's also analysis for intersections in Amarillo. So the top 5 of those include Southwest 10th and South Taylor, 34th and Bell, South Osage and 27th Street, Bell and Southwest 11th, and Southeast 10th and Bolton. So again, the full summary is available on our project website. It's available to the public. It talks about the leading causes for crashes, the manner of collision, and other contributing factors. And then the second part of the planning process is the community engagement. So as you may know, we have a staff person in our department, a community engagement manager who coordinates closely with our Office of Engagement and Innovation. And we've really prioritized citizen engagement over the last couple years at Shari Kindle, who's here, if you don't mind waving. So we've done, or we're going to have 2 primary outreach efforts as part of this. So we've completed the first one, which was an interactive map, which you may have seen. We received an overwhelming response from the citizens of Amarillo who identified legitimate safety concerns using this map tool. It's obvious that this is a very important topic in Amarillo, and the comments are constructive and meaningful. We had nearly 10,000 visits to this website from 6,800 users who left over 47 comments. And I think it's really interesting because of this program. There are a number of these plans going on around Texas and in our region. And so we've looked at some of those others, and we can't find any city that's close to having that level of participation. So Oklahoma City, El Paso, Midland, McAllen, Dallas are all under 2,000 comments. So it's another thing we just wanted to share with you is the amount of engagement by Amarillo citizens in this project really has been like nothing we've ever seen before. So the second survey is open now this week, and we want everyone to come back and participate in that, and that's going to help us prioritize the projects and funding. So at this point, there's also a summary of these comments. They've all been mapped, and again, we're encouraging people to go to the website and see the results from this. The most citizen comments relate to more stop signs and signals, reducing speed, and improved sidewalks, especially around schools. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is the demonstration grant submittal that we're working on now. It's called Safer Speeds for School, and I think this is a good illustration of how the data analysis and the community engagement comes together into the final product for this plan. This one, we submitted it in August. And so we used some of the findings from the data analysis to make the case for this project, specifically that of the 13 bike and pedestrian fatalities between 2019 and 2023, all but one of those occurred within a half mile of a school. And we also received a lot of citizen comments about improving safety around schools. So we've requested about $650,000 to pilot. These would be temporary safety improvements because some of these things would be new for Amarillo, so that's why it's called a demonstration grant. So we can test them, we can measure before and after and see if we are affecting the data. But the schools are Hamlet, San Jacinto, Margaret Wills, and Olson Park Elementary, and then Crockett Middle School. And we are awaiting award of this later this fall. So next steps, the projects and priorities survey is open now through October 25th. Once that closes, we'll be working on developing the final deliverable for this plan is going to be 15 projects. So the Safer Speeds for Schools is essentially the first project. So there'll be 14 more like that. And then we'll have a final open house. And we're expecting plan completion in early 2025. The URL goes directly to the survey that's open now. You can find the plan is linked from the Planning Department website. And I'd be happy to take any questions or listen to any concerns that you may have.
Questions, council?
I just have one. Thank you for the presentation. So looking at this, when it's talking about the $5 billion over 5 years ending in 26, if our study's finished and the pilot's complete, in 25, is that only that small gap time frame of where we can get available funding to finish the rest of the projects that end up being presented, or what's kind of the funding idea down the road?
Yeah, I think our best case scenario is that we would make it in time for the FY25 and FY26 rounds of funding. This is the bipartisan infrastructure law. That was a larger infusion into this program, but this program is an ongoing federal program, and so we would expect it to continue to be funded and be able to participate. It just may not have, like right now, it's an unprecedented amount that's available. It may just not have the funding level that it does now.
Okay, thank you.
So, Emily, after we collect all the the data and the input from the community, what happens after that? I mean, how do we implement to help these, fatalities and crashes and that kind of thing? Like, what's put in place?
So the projects that are identified are going to be a mix of actual construction projects, and then part of the SS4A approach also relates to policy, law enforcement, and education. And so, we're going to rely on our transportation consultants, the advisory committee, our technical committee to figure out what, besides construction, what some of those other things are that are appropriate for Amarillo. And then it would be a matter of starting to work towards changing some of those things. So it might be like street design or building our roads a little bit differently. Like when we rebuild a arterial, there might be a different design feature that's involved with that. There might be something with our intersections and signaling that would be implemented. And then things like the project that we're showing around schools, where we might, that might be a successful project for us, and we would start to implement safety improvements at all of our schools in Amarillo, just as an example of how this might, once adopted, be implemented.
Okay, and that's all grant funded?
Well, I think our goal would be that we would definitely be able to access the SS4A grant funding, but that we would be able to work in some of these projects. We have new funding sources available to us through the MPO, so start to try to use that as a funding source. Like there might be projects we'd want to present through the CIP that would be part of this plan, but everything would be in coordination with our other departments too, like traffic department, CP&DE. Planning wouldn't be coming forward with something that isn't consistent with what other departments are already doing or trying to do.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any questions down here? So Ms. Kohler, previously when we did the Vision 2045, we received a lot of concerns for different terminology like smart cities, Vision Zero. Can you speak to that one more time? Does this grant have any strings attached to it, any metrics that we've got to meet, anything that would require surveillance or anything that was attached to like that World Economic Forum style agenda?
No, there's nothing like that. I realize the term can be controversial, unfortunately. That's one of the reasons why we're recommending the specific goal that we are. But no, it really is a program all about safety, improving safety on our local streets, and we would just have the regular reporting for grant funding like we do for all the other grant funds that we access at the city.
Okay. I appreciate you taking the direct question. I think it's good to get out in front of that. So, grant monies that are there for us that will improve upon safety, especially around schools, I think this council sees the benefit in that. And, on a 20% match, that can sometimes be very, very beneficial. But I think it's always good to know if there's ever a leading going somewhere, maybe what this directive would be. And so it's nice to know that it's just about safety. So thank you for that. I know you have a few next steps in what you're putting forward. Do you need anything further from council on this one?
I think if you're comfortable with the goal, because the plan would need to be adopted, we would bring it back to you for adoption. And so with that goal, and through the adoption process, you'd be stating that as your public commitment. So I just want to make sure that at this time you're okay if we proceed with reducing crashes, severe and fatal, 35% by 2035, which is like 4 crashes a year.
Yes, sir.
One thing I might ask about that, does that, if we're factoring in population and traffic growth over that time, we might want, even though we're safer, we might wind up having more. Would it be a per capita be a better way to measure that other than just raw numbers? Because over the course of the next whatever years, we're probably going to have more traffic, more population, and we might not see it go down to that number, but or is that generally the measure or the way that it's used?
Yeah, I probably would ask our transportation consultants that. I know they've done the per 10,000. Like we've seen that number too, crashes per 10,000. And so that analysis was part of this figure, so we could visit with them about that. It might already be incorporated into some of those calculations, but yeah, we can ask them about that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Kohler, I think we're good to let you proceed and bring something back that we could potentially entertain, and I think it's going to come down to a dollar figure. So if you're looking at a demonstration of $650,000, and we would be matching 20% of that, is that my understanding? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then that would last, let's say, 6 months, 9 months, whatever the term would be, and then we would know, we didn't see anything or we saw something worth investing in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate you being
Yeah.
here. We'll look for you back soon.
Okay. Thanks for your time.
All right. Thank you. Item 8C is 2025 legislative agenda. Mr. Freeman, if you can give us a quick recap on where we were last year and what you are adding on this year as we move forward.
Right. So last meeting, I presented on this topic at a high level, kind of covering the previous resolution that we had covering this topic. We discussed the various areas that we discussed on the legislative priorities. We cover everything from transportation, pro-family policy, property tax, sales tax language, really taking a defensive approach for cities as far as regulations that might impact the city, might impact our availability to complete projects or meet service levels. We've touched on annexation, open meetings and open records, economic development, mental health. For example, we had the mental health hospital as a goal on our legislative agenda. So that's what we kind of covered 2 weeks ago. The purpose of today is really to get any additional feedback of ideas that maybe y'all have thought about over the last couple of weeks, that we can then take that language, incorporate it into the document, and then in a couple of weeks or the next couple of meetings, we'll bring back a new resolution for y'all to consider with those revisions. Staff will also update just some of the general language in the document. We'll remove some of those like the mental health hospital, like Chapter 313 agreements. Some of those things that have already been checked off the to-do list on the policy, we'll remove those, incorporate the new ones. Some from the staff level that we've talked about, sales tax in newly annexed areas. If there's emergency services district, might be something that we want to have on there as a discussion point. We've also got the hospital district that in the future will need to be able to add a property tax once those funds from the hospital sale go away. So we want to get that on there just so we can start having those conversations, because that could be a multi-legislative session topic to tackle. So those are just some of the examples, but really today is just discussion, get feedback from y'all. We'll take notes and we'll try and integrate those into a final document.
Real good. Council, do you have any questions on where Mr. Freeman's at in the process before we get into a discussion? Okay. Council, did you bring anything specific that we could add in addition to this? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've got a list. I can just read them off. Just some generic for and against or for and oppose. Bills that strengthen border security without placing unfunded mandates on cities. Bills that strengthen school security that are funded. Providing for a fair and transparent appraisal process. Bills that improve mental health services to be affordable and patient-centered. Bills that would grant residents property tax relief. Supporting bills that allow judges the ability to deny bail for major threats to public safety. Support a council option city homestead exemption. Bills that would support advanced cancer screenings for firefighters. Provide additional funding to Department of Transportation for transportation infrastructure. Legislation for water rights within ETJs and city limits. And then oppose any bills that would limit local control, cause unfunded mandate burden to cities, and anything that would erode municipal authority related to development matters. I think that's it.
Excellent. Okay, we got a few there. I don't know how quick you were typing over there, Stephanie.
I got Stephanie over there typing away.
I heard her going. So, in the wording, I would ask, this is our opportunity just so our public hears it. So local municipalities can bring forward local ordinances that hit some of these very ideas, but it can be more beneficial if you have something that you see as a need locally to petition your legislatures at the state and let them work on it underneath a state law. So it's our opportunity to bring up some things that we're hearing from our constituents that you guys have concerns with, and it's also our opportunity to kind of push our legislatures towards taking some action that we see up here. So a lot of it comes down more generalized in the way of like, don't limit local control. But then also it's just supportive in, we believe in a strong border and we see the need for that. We want them to keep pushing for that. So as a body, this is what we're saying that represents the majority of, the city of Amarillo. Do you need anything further in the way in which he gave you a couple general guidelines? Can legal work that?
Yeah, those are great examples. We can kind of fine tune the language based on those statements.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Tips, did you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Councilman?
Quick question on the hospital district, because I do think that is probably a major. Is that common across the state? I mean, are there other communities, and how did they navigate that transition to back to having to fund it.
Right. I may ask Laura, I think hospital districts are common, but I think tax rates are more common. We're kind of the unique entity that we had a hospital to sell to fund it. So we got stuck in the point that we didn't need a tax, and now that they've changed the state laws, that's why we would struggle to raise it without requiring an election. And then if it fails and we don't have a property tax, we'd have to find other ways to fund it. I don't know if there's an example of another one across the state. We're pretty unique, unfortunately.
And the ballpark estimate on that funding is?
Through 2036 is when it'll last.
And then, I mean, best guess estimate of how much that will be at the time? That we would have to?
Oh, how much of a tax we'd have to raise? Yeah, we can get that for you. Yeah. So I think we're sitting on a little over 120 million that we're expending over the rest of the term.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you do the quick math on that in the way it's like if that's 12-year projection, do we run $10 million a year in indigent care reimbursements?
I can share the budget with you.
Okay.
It would be a little hard to project out what the tax rate
Okay.
would be.
At that time.
That way,
Yeah.
the tax rate that the building is
Okay.
I think we're unique too. It wouldn't just be Amarillo city limits paying, it'd be Potter County residents paying as well.
So it'll change.
So it'd be a
Okay.
bigger tax base than what we're used to inside the city limits.
I know it's not a simple math problem, so we'll give you a minute. Councilman Simpson, do you have anything else to look at on legislation?
I do not.
Okay, I have a few. So one thing that I've seen and one thing that I would like is true informed consent in the way in which medical consent, typically speaks to these are your risks associated with any procedure. These are the alternate methods to remedy this issue, and these are my conflicts of interest financially if I'm being paid to provide that service. Food production, food that is injected with experimental or mRNA type technologies, processed foods, manufactured foods that aren't real, like fake meat, I guess I would say. We would like to encourage testing and regulatory controls. Stratospheric, atmospheric sprayed particles. And so, aluminum, bromium, strontium, things that are sprayed into the atmosphere above, 2,000 feet above where we sit at sea level, what those contaminants are, who the regulatory bodies are at the state, what testing is going on for soil contamination, water contamination, and like. Support for merit hiring practices or businesses that hire based on merit and oppose all DEI policies. Oppose climate change energy code policies that do not recognize industry metrics for return on investment, or I guess I would say they're cost prohibitive. So going to our building codes and standards. Oppose all foreign land purchases and support private property rights from bad actors, including climate change initiatives. Support for state law that protects minors to sexually explicit performances in public spaces. Oppose any measure that grants medical or disaster authority to any entity other than state or local sovereignty. Opposition to future pandemic agreements globally. Support for grant monies for nuclear reactor power plants and improve self-reliability on the Texas power grid. Last one, support for state policies that recognize traditional gender, male and female sex at birth in all venues. And that's mine. Anything else from council? Any discussion on any of those items, gentlemen? Okay.
We will work to package that all into a new revised document, get that out to council ahead of time so you can see the language, and then based on the feedback we're hearing, we'll put it on an agenda for consideration.
Fantastic, Mr. Freeman. We appreciate you, and we appreciate Senator Kevin Sparks for prompting us to, send legislative encouragements and agendas down there. And so we look forward, and we are very grateful for our senator and our House representatives for all their work for us at the state. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
All right, we will move on from item 8C into item 8D. Update regarding the AEDC Corporation in connection to financial assistance provided to the range. I am going to ask if our city manager wouldn't mind maybe speaking to this and giving us kind of a recap as to what progress you've made. And then I know we have Unil Gerber here that's going to give us an update on what he's doing for the 3-year financial look back.
Microphone's not working.
Sorry to put you at the podium, but
Yes, I'll be speaking more to the next item, I think, about the budget, and so I can address some things about that.
are you comfortable then handing it over to
Yes,
Unil? You
yes.
didn't have anything you needed
No,
beforehand?
we have staff have been working on the council's request for the audit for the review of the last 3 years' financials, and so we've been working with Neil and his team. They've been working hard, putting a lot of hours into this, and so we did meet this morning with Neil to get an update, and so we've asked Neil to come today and be prepared to give you a status update. We're not done yet. We do ask we have more time to get this done, so you have a complete package when it's all, so you can review that. But I'll turn over to Neil now to kind of give you an update as to where he's at.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Afternoon.
Mayor, council, you guys are keeping us busy. Just a quick update. Well, a quick update. We'll give you a chance to ask some questions. So we estimate we're about 2/3 complete with the audit. We've put in roughly 98 hours between me and my team. We were able to extract all the data for the expenses for the 3 years, isolated anything over 25,000. For payment vouchers, we've got support there. We're currently working on getting support for all the journal entries that's been made, adjusting entries, to review those. So those are not complete yet. So we looked roughly at about 4,300 line items. So it's a lot. Fortunately, we could dummy it down to anything over 25,000, so that made it easier. It looks like between journal entries and the payment vouchers, we're going to have amazing coverage, about 90% per year compared to expenses. So we're covering a lot of those areas. You see, we're also looking at vendors that in total is greater than 25, because you might have a vendor where we pay 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 a month, but in accumulation for the year, they could be over that number. So we're also looking at that. We're looking at the processes behind it, the approval steps, how does the process flow for both payment vouchers and journal entries, because it's two different items. So looking at that, so we're making good progress. So what we'd be able to do is estimate in about, not this week, but by the following week, Friday, we should be able to give you some answers on this audit. So, any questions? Anything I can answer?
I'm sure we will have a few. Council, you have any questions on this one?
Be Friday, like October 4th?
Yes, not this, but next weekend, next Friday. Yeah. Yeah, we're making better progress than what I anticipated when we first started. So, and the team, we've put all our other projects on the back burner and focusing on this. So.
Before we jump to any other questions, I guess my concern or my intention is to make sure that we have a thorough look back and financial review. And it sounds like you are pulling everything. You're seeing the processes. You're seeing the nature of how we do business. You're seeing some of the policies we follow, maybe some of the things that could be more loose. And, well, there's not an actual policy directive here, but we have a pattern in how we function this business. It's going to be very important that our citizens see that this was a thorough review and inquiry, and that we pulled all of the data. And then how much of that data will be publicly released? Can we just redact a few vendor names and still release everything since it's public monies? And then that way it's not something that yourself or council is looked at in, well, you didn't look in the right places, you didn't see, this. So what we're trying to do is restore confidence.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about what this is going to look like when we hand it over.
Yes, so basically what we can do is once we complete, you will see where we extracted the data, and you can tie that back to trial balance and say, okay, this is what we looked at, here's the total, here's what we didn't look at, percentages, because we're not looking at something like salaries or depreciation. We're looking at pure expenses. So we'll be able to tell you, here's what we looked at, here's what we didn't look at, here's your percentage. Folks can see the transactions. We got them listed by general ledger, so you can see every line item. Then for those items over 25, you'll have all the information there. You'll have the documentation showing that it's a valid transaction, it was approved, we got the support. We'll be able to tell you whether it's in budget line. So, did we approve that budget? So we don't want them spending $300,000 if it was approved for $250,000. So we're showing that. We'll also look where the funding's coming from. Of course, majority of the funding does come from sales tax. So there's a few small items that come into play, but most of the funding comes through that. So we'll have all those documents available for anybody to look at. Of course, we'll be available to answer questions. If somebody wants to come sit with us, we can take you step by step to show you exactly what we did.
So speak to this one issue that has spurred this on. Speak to this wire transfer. Will you be able to pull, these are the other wire transfers that happened in similar amounts or in large amounts. Here's the way that they were transferred. Here was the request. Here's the documentation to support it. What will you be able to show us so that concern would be alleviated as well?
Well, what we're going to look at is to ensure that if any one of those wire transfers or payments is following the same process, that you don't come out here and say, hey, why is this one done different? Okay. You need to just remember it's two different. We've got budget transfer items, and then we've got the process of paying a PV or wire. And if that follows the same process, then at least the financial side is working as designed. Okay, so we can come back. So, yeah, here's the request. It went through the approval. One manager entered the wire. The next one approved it before all the transaction was completed. So if it stays consistent with how we do any other wires, that side, so then we've got another problem that we need to address. But I'll be able to show that on every wire transfer that we selected and say, look, it's the same process. So.
Okay. That's really good. Council, sorry to keep asking questions. Further questions? Yes, sir. Councilman Sherlin.
When you bring this report to us, will you bring recommendations as well?
Yes.
Will you bring best practices?
Yes. So
we'll have a complete report with your recommendations and everything that we should do to correct that kind of transaction.
Yes. I will be. Once I've wrapped that up and I've looked at every process, I will, specific to each process, I will provide you some recommendations. Say, hey, let's implement this or this or this and go through that. And then, of course, it'll be up to you to decide how strict you want to do or if you want to do any changes. So.
Yeah, the importance is that we fix the problem.
Yes, sir.
And this can't happen again without proper oversight. So I just wanted to make sure from accounting practice that we would have a complete report by you
Yes.
And anybody else you want to include in the report.
Yeah, no, I'll wrap it up with a nice bow.
All right,
Have
thank
everything
you.
in there that you need.
Councilman?
Just curious on the transfer piece, have you noticed any inconsistencies yet?
Well, I haven't completed my audit, so I looked at some samples, and it looks like everything is following the same process. So nothing has really popped out as of yet.
Thank you.
But like I said, once I'm finished, I'll give you the total results.
Are you including reimbursements in this?
It wasn't in the scope of the audit, but yes, sir, we are. So we've already extracted that data, but it'll be on the tail end. So.
Yes, sir. No. Good. Oh. You have something there? Let's go to, before we step to our next one, let's kind of set some expectations here. So you were just asked maybe October 4th would be like a good goal for you to have a rough draft.
No, I think I should have it wrapped up by then.
Okay.
So what I'll have to do is once I've got all my numbers, I'll run it past, and we'll look at what we needed to scrap or redact.
Mm-hmm.
But my goal is to get it done. So
not this Friday, next Friday, you think
Friday.
you'd have something?
Yes,
Council, I would want us to set the expectations for us. I think you need a week to be able to go through this data and kind of see if you have questions.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, with our goal of doing our due diligence, our fiduciary responsibility and oversight, and then we would be able to come in and speak to, do we have current policies that we're following, whether they are written in the bylaws or they're just a practice of business?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have anything else that we've been made aware of that we need to deal with, or is this the only issue? And then I would want to know, would you have concerns with approving their budget based on what you're seeing? Or with what you're seeing, do you see their budget as a non-issue because you're seeing data that you just said to Councilman Kraft that you didn't see anything that was peculiar outside of this issue?
Yeah, no, I think my opinion is that I don't see an issue with the budget. I think from what I identified right now, the only concern I have is with the budget transfer for the ranch. Other than that, I am not seeing anything as of yet. But like I say, I haven't wrapped up my full audit, but I am fairly comfortable that it's not going to impact the approval of the budget.
Okay. Yes, sir.
My opinion
Sir.
is if it was able to be done once, I don't think we need a budget until we know what we're dealing with. I mean, it happened one time. I want it fixed before we give anybody any money, because, in fact, as we get in down here, I'm going to ask that any organization, as a future discussion item, that any organization that the city gives money to, I'd like to see a quarterly financials on them, because that is our responsibility. I don't care if they're tier zones or whatever. We need to see, that is our responsibility. It's taxpayer money, and we as representatives of the taxpayers have got to be held accountable. And if it's on me if we allow something to go by.
Correct.
So
yes, sir.
That's just my thought.
Well, I appreciate the opinion and your thought. I think we'll work our way through 8E next, and then we'll jump on that one so you can be more specific as to what maybe Laura already requires, and then what we would want in addition to that. Any further questions for Mr. Gerber? Okay, we look forward to getting the full review back next Friday, and then we'll be diligent to get it turned around and out to the citizens.
Thank you for your time, you and your
Yes.
team.
Thank you.
We do appreciate all the time. With no further action on that one, we'll move on to item 8E. And now I would see if our city manager does have a operable microphone, if you can take us into that one.
I now have 2 operable microphones in case one goes out.
I
so-
need both.
Yes. This item, in consultation with Mayor Stanley and Councilmember Simpson, we added this item here to kind of get some guidance on the AEDC budget and approval. Quick update, we did, council had asked us what the law says in regards to approving their budget by October 1st. City attorney did look into that, and so there is no requirement. The true answer is there's no requirement to approve a budget by October 1st, so that's not a requirement. However, I would advise the city council that you should consider giving some guidance. When October 1st hits, they should be given some sort of guidance as to what to do and what not to do. So with that, the council discussed 3 different options. One option was to approve their budget as is and move forward. Other option, as we heard today, again, was no budget until we get either we get a review done or some other term sent back to us. And then the last one was maybe approve a budget with conditions. And so obviously the first 2 are easy, very straightforward. Approve the budget, that's pretty straightforward. You've been given their budget at a previous meeting. Second one obviously being straightforward, at least a staff standpoint. If no budget, that's pretty straightforward to us. Obviously it creates complications for the AEDC and moving forward October 1st. The third one being conditions. And so staff and I, we did sit down to kind of get some ideas about should you wish to pursue that conditioned option. We do have some ideas that we might present to you for that. But again, this is a discussion item to talk about, I guess to kind of set the stage. We are looking at bringing the budget back to you on September 30th. We're going to look at PIDS budgets, but we're also going to bring back the AEDC budget at that time. So it'll be the day before October 1st. So with that, we have some ideas to present on the conditions. However, if there's an interest to disapprove the budget on September 30th, then we can do that. So this is a discussion this time.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Let me give you guys our task or our objective here so you'll know. We had a small issue on just getting some of our first and second readings lined out on a calendar, and so it pushed us to a special meeting on September 30th, which is a Monday. Councilman Simpson won't be able to attend that, and so with this being something that we want to give an opportunity for council to either approve the budget, not approve the budget, or approve it with conditions, we wanted to facilitate a discussion here today in hopes that if we had, direction from Councilman Simpson, we'd be comfortable to vote on it on Monday. If we're not going to get there, then we won't get there, and we won't have that on the agenda on that following Monday. We'll just do the PIDs. But this discussion should be fairly productive in what council would like to do so that we could take action on Monday, assuming that council's comfortable doing it with just 4 of us present. So I would like to know, do I have any council members that have already decided one way or the other or have a preference before we discuss conditions? Because I would like to hear your conditions.
I would like to give them operational money only until we get to the bottom of it. Let them do business. If they have something big they need to take care of, they can bring it to the council. But I don't see approving their budget until we get some answers.
Can you define operational monies?
Salaries,
okay,
expenses, electricity, water, whatever.
Would
I'm
that?
not saying anything above. I don't want to pay for Cokes. I don't want to pay for cigarettes or nothing else. Just straight operational cost.
Okay, so very clear on the cigarettes part. Appreciate that. So
or cigars.
Or cigars. Yeah. No vapes either. So let me go a little bit further to see if the contracts that we have contractual obligations to that this council, previous councils have already approved, any issue with continuing to fulfill the obligations on those contracts.
They can bring those to us and we'll approve them.
So you want additional constraint on those, but continue forward with them, obviously.
Yes.
Okay. So you're not trying to restrain contractual obligations, personnel, or day-to-day operations.
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments from council?
Well, for Tom, I think the things that we've already approved I mean, I just don't see any reason why them bringing them back forth, because they've already come before us. But I don't know how that's going to look in dicing this budget up of like how much is released, how much is not. Is there not a way that we can put the conditions on our side as far as, initiating new policy of any expenditure over, we choose, the dollar amount, 25, 50, whatever it is,
Okay.
For an approval that way to restrict anything going forward, which would then put in place what you're saying already, but just with policy.
Correct.
Well, on that point, I mean, I would say that we technically already do have policy in place as far as we're supposed to approve. The board's supposed to approve expenditures, and it comes to us. So if you're just doing operating, salaries like Tom's saying, everything else should come to us anyways in a perfect world as our policy sits. I'm still thinking as far as on these three options, where we're going to land. I don't think it needs to be an additional policy right now. I think we can do that under their existing, with approval of their expenditures.
We're looking at maybe 3 to 4 weeks having this thing sorted out, I think, aren't we? Somewhere in there.
Let's hope so.
So we're looking at a 3 to 4 week halt or slowdown, however you want to put it. And hopefully at that time, once we get everything worked out one way or another, we'll be able to release the full budget at that point in time. I mean, I don't want to hamstring them along, but this has been a big blow up. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting calls every day from citizens wanting to know how this happened and how we allowed it to happen. And it's been tough to explain. I know the mayor and Don have both been on radio shows trying to explain it, and it's just hard to explain.
Mr. City Manager, you want to lay out maybe a recommendation from staff, if you can help us navigate this?
Absolutely, I'm happy to. So yes, I know you would have saw this in one of your previous packets. I know you don't have it in front of you here, but you have it in a previous packet. And this AEDC presented to you a budget. Now the budget's basically divided into 4 sections. They have the operating section, they have their business development section, the TPRDC section, then their project activity section. Now, first off, project activities, those are things that you've already reviewed in prior meetings. Those are big contracts and incentives to whoever your big industries are. So those have already been set by contract. We have established dates to pay those. And so those are, that's the bulk of their budget, because those are incentives tied to those. There's millions of dollars there. Our recommendation of staff is that you allow those to continue as contracted. And so those have been approved by council. I recommend that we continue to do those when the dates come to approve those. Next thing is operating. Their operating consists of their salaries, their health insurance, some office expenses. They have insurance for like liability, general property insurance. They have the rental for their building as well. Postage. These are standard operating expenses to have an entity or a business running. So looking at their actuals from prior years, their current budget of $1.8 million is running very close to actual. And so there's a little bit of room there for some growth there, but there's not a lot of extra room that they budgeted asked for. So their numbers do seem to be lined up with what they've actually spent when it comes to those expenses. And so our recommendation is that you do allow them to continue those expenses, because that's to keep the doors open. That's to keep people employed, working the jobs. As an EDC, you do task them with business retention. We have industries in town that part of the job EDC is to check on them and make sure, are you still happy? You like in Amarillo? Are you looking to expand? How can we help you with that? So we would ask that you please you might consider allowing them to continue to do that. That way they continue to keep industry in town. So those kind of things for operating. You also have TPRDC. I'm not quite familiar. That's mostly operating expenses for those, very similar to the main operating budget. Those are just pretty straightforward. We recommend those we continue as planned. That gets you down to the business development section. That's $800,000 right there. That's where I think the crux of a lot of this may be at. In that section there, there's $800,000. You're going to see, again, if you look back at your budgets when you have time to look at that, they spell out things. This is what their website development. This is a lot of their conferences they attend. This is the travel expenses to get to those conferences. This is engagement, workforce development. There's a lot of things in there. This is some big ticket items there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different primary accounts. One's $150,000, another $45,000, $25,000, $30,000, $360,000, $70,000, $60,000, and $60,000, a total $800,000. And then they go forward, when you look at their budget, they go through and they break that down into subcategories. So our recommendations there, this is where we might recommend you apply some conditions on this. You authorize them to spend within those categories. And so they've given you a budget to proceed with that. You proceed with that. However, you could make a condition that if they need to, let me get back to my notes here. So in this section here, approve the AEDC budget, the business development budget as presented with no account line item to exceed the approved budget without prior council approval. So if they need to go beyond 360 for the business development section or 30,000 for the collateral materials, they get your approval first. But then for the subcategories within those, no spend category within each account line item can be overspent by 25% or more without prior authorization from the council. So they have those accounts to work within, but if, say, like within their $360,000 business development line, if they need to go from $5,000 to $10,000 for ports to planes, that comes back to council approval. That's more than 25%. You look at that. At marketing, technology, and software for $45,000, if they're a light cast line, if it's $18,000 goes up to $32,000, that goes to council for approval. But if it goes up to maybe $19,000, then they do that because it's within their overall budget for that line item there. So it gives them things to operate within, but it also provides some checks there to come back to you when they go to exceed the big account line or they go to exceed 25% of the subcategories. So again, summary there. Operating, we recommend that you allow them to continue to operate within the operating budget, as well as a TPRDC budget operating. Project activities, those are already contracted out. We recommend that you allow those to continue as planned. But then that business development line, the business development budget there, that you place the conditions on that for the do not exceed the categories, and then 25% for the subcategories. And I can line this out to you in an email in preparation for the next meeting as well. So it's a lot of information to throw at you, but we have been working on this, and I want to show you we've been working on it.
Thank you for that. I think that's very helpful. Councilman Simpson, you won't be able to be here next Monday. If the direction was to move along with staff recommendation, would you have any issue with that, knowing that it's temporary 3-4 weeks before we would have everything in place, hopefully, and just move forward with a regular budget?
Well, I don't know. I guess I've got more questions than answers. But, I mean, my question, I guess, is what is the end goal of all this? I mean, are we looking to eliminate the AEDC? Are we looking to clean house? Are we looking to get a pound of flesh? Or, what are we looking to do here? Because for some reason, it seems, for about the last year, back and forth, for some reason we feel like we've been at odds with the AEDC. Going back to the Enterprise Challenge money, one of the few programs in the community that helps small businesses, and we said, no, we want to take that away. We sat down and had them rework their incentive packages. We said, well, you're going to have to pay to help us on the infrastructure of the Northwest Interceptor, which could take money away from recruiting other businesses. And now we're re-examining something that happened 3 years ago. If you look at the AEDC, which was founded in 1989, it's had 4 executive directors since it was founded. Our current director has been there for 5 years. And in all that time, have there been any previous directors that have been as successful working with their staff at recruiting industry in a 5-year period as the current director when you look at the industries coming to Amarillo and the jobs created? And just if you're not a student of the history of the city, that inherited a director who was here for less than 2 years, and we had terrible problems with the EDC at that time that we were trying to fix. Are there not more serious problems that we have to be spending council time and staff on than this? I mean, of all the challenges we face, water and sewer lines, older than any of us, wastewater treatment plants, does the EDC even rank on the first page of that list of problems that we're facing. If you can give me a second, I'll finish. Well, and then we looked at the amount of time, energy, and effort that this has taken: staff, paid attorneys, resources. But I'm not angry or mad about it. I mean, it's part of it, and this is the direction that we say. But I am concerned. And what impact does a council being at odds with its EDC have on recruiting businesses to Amarillo? I mean, if we act like we don't have a good, trustful relationship, are companies from other areas going to be able to look at us? And what other cities are going to say, wow, you know, we've really got a chance and an opportunity to do that? Do they see red flags when we say we don't have infrastructure that can keep up with what we're trying to do? I'm asking that we approve the budget. I don't think this has any, the oversight part of it. We can implement the new policies and plans, get the financial review done, and then let's let the EDC and its board get on to the task of doing its job that it's been successful at doing for 35 years.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilman Sherlin.
Yes, sir. Councilman Simpson, I appreciate your thoughts and everything there. I don't think we're trying to get rid of the AEDC. We're trying to make the AEDC accountable. Things change in 5 years. In my opinion, they lost the respect of the taxpayers when they moved money that was not approved. Now, that's $750,000, plus if you add $200,000 for the research, plus you add $100,000 for the down payment for a building, we're in over $1 million on this deal. So I don't think we're against the AEDC. Now, I think the AEDC can communicate with us a whole lot better, which I think we've lacked in that considerably. And I think it would be nice when this first came up if the AEDC came to us and talked to us, but they chose not to do that. Now, I reached out. I see you're looking there, Kevin. There's a nice look you gave me. But I'm going to tell you straight out, until we get to the bottom of this is ugly. The citizens do not like it. It looks like business as usual downtown. And me as one, I will not approve. I will vote against any budget until we get it fixed.
So let me go back to the middle of the road here real quick. Words matter. Councilman Simpson,
But I don't agree with you.
you'd said odds, so it may look or appear like we're at odds, at times with the AEDC or a project or whatever. It's important to understand, we're not at odds with the AEDC. We're holding the AEDC accountable in this one issue. We're also doing our job in oversight in requiring good practices and good policies, and then bringing in what we feel like is good representation, trying to work with their board and work through a strategic business plan. I, for one, am in favor of economic development as long as it's part of the competition practices within the state of Texas. So does it have its critics? Absolutely. But then economic development is always a little controversial, and it's not out of the ordinary for council to question EDCs all across the state. It's also not out of the ordinary to have EDCs that bring controversial projects and that citizens comment on and people have opinions. I liked what you said. It's not personal. We have a job to do here. I'm just trying to do my job, and I'm trying to be very impersonal towards the EDC as individuals. They're not individuals. This is an entity that I'm looking at. And nobody, once again, is saying that the issue that we had with the funding of the range is appropriate, was authorized, or should not be held as a big deal. It does hold itself as a big deal to our citizens, and they hold us to that level of accountability. We went from a $100,000 approved budget item to $750,000 wire transfer. And we will hold that item accountable. I think we're going slow. We're trying to take it one step at a time. We are not trying to handicap our EDC or do damage to the abilities of the EDC to do their job. So I'm in favor of passing a constrained budget. I think that we ought to be able to allow them to continue on. We have contractual obligations, and we intend on making this entity better, not eliminating it and not taking away from it. And definitely don't want to speak to anything other than how much production they've had over the last 5 years. So I want to encourage us to just say I think the accountability side is not at odds, but we are on two separate sides of this dais in this issue. Any further discussion on this?
No, I mean, I would just add to that, I think that we owe a duty to our constituents to, like you said, Mayor, I think he said it very well, to say we're balancing this issue. As you know, we do take things slow. We do want to get all the facts. We want to do that. And I think that's what we're doing. And appreciate you, Neil, and the Finance Department doing that. But we do owe, it's a balancing act because, again, we don't want to hamstring our AEDC because they are doing good things. And again, some people agree, some people disagree. But we all want Amarillo to grow, I think. So I'm in line with you, Mayor, with more of a constraint budget until we get to the bottom of this, 3-4 weeks, whatever it is, but to allow the operations, allow the previous obligations. I don't want to hamstring it all, but I do believe that policy needs to be put in place where this can't happen again, because I don't think anybody liked it. But I think that's an easy fix on our side, on the city side. And I think the board of the AEDC would agree as well that they would never do this again. So I would agree more towards moving the constrained budget.
So a constrained budget and your recommendation, did you have a conversation? And I know Mr. Carter's here, so he can speak for himself if he chooses to, but I just want to know, have you guys had a conversation? Do you feel like this is functional? Does your recommendation come with some cooperation from the EDC that they're okay moving forward with this?
Yeah, well, two things. I had an opportunity to attend their board meeting today, and they have actually approved some policy changes. I think Mr. Carter can speak to that a little better than I can. So they have approved some changes as of today in regards to approval and signatures and so forth. We did, Laura Storrs and I did meet with Mr. Carter yesterday to kind of look at their budget and to kind of get some ideas as to what we were seeing. That's what led to my suggestions that should you go toward a constrained or conditioned budget. That conversation yesterday did lead to this, and so I've not had a conversation with Mr. Carter about these conditions here. I think Ms. Storrs had, but I've not checked Mr. Carter as to your question whether this works.
So the AEDC board made some recommendations for some additional policy changes?
Yeah, they approved some policy changes today, yes.
So we have additional policies that they are currently working under as of today?
Correct.
Okay. And would either of you guys want to share those, Mr. Carter?
Sure, Scott, I do want to clear the air on one question. It was a puzzled look, Tom, because not one single time have I been asked to this dais until right now. I went to the executive session and answered y'all's questions that you asked me. Other than that, not a single one of you, other than Councilmember Simpson, have reached out to me individually or this board.
Is it our job to reach out to you, or is it your job to reach out to us? We're the governing organization, are we not?
Yes, sir, but if you have questions.
I don't report to you, do I?
No, sir, but if you have questions.
Okay, you report to me, do you?
No, I report to I'll report to
the board. Maybe I need the board manager, board chairman up here.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to clear the air about the puzzled look, but you get not one single question or one opportunity right here.
That look said 1,000 words, and I didn't like what you said on your face.
Yes, sir.
And you can do what you want there.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Carter, let's redirect and get to these. Do you have two or
yes, sir.
three policy changes?
We implemented two policies, and that was sort of the recommendation that our board member Scott Bentley and Board Member Andrew Hall brought to you and Councilmember Simpson
Okay.
as recommendations. Those policies were enacted today, along with some other changes to our AEDC policy and procedures. But one of those was to any expenditure that exceeds $50,000 would need to be approved by the board and the council.
Okay.
And then any line item budget that exceeded that line item by more than $50,000 would have to be brought to council and to the board for approval. And then the other policy that was implemented was any transaction that's over $500,000, any payment or expenditure over $500,000 would require 2 signatures, which would be my signature and the board chair signature.
Okay. So those 3, in addition to, other policies that you've currently been working under in the form of your bylaws?
Correct, but there's not any specific number. There's no specific rules in those bylaws other than, we bring the board approval for a budget, and then that budget is approved. It's very broad.
Pretty
yes,
broad
sir.
in shall approve.
So we tried to specify that.
Now you're going to bring that in, willingly, kind of your own volition, $50,000 and above, a lot like what we have.
Very similar to what the city has, yes, sir.
Okay. Council, any questions on that for Mr. Carter, or any comments on their initiative in that process?
Well, the only question I have, go ahead.
1 second, Tom. Go ahead, Councilman Kraft.
So where does the board approves all expenditures and city council approves all expenditures? Where does that lie? It seems like we're
actually, if you read the definition of expenditures, when you approve the budget, you're approving our expenditures for the year, just like you do for the city's budget. Just like our board does. When they bring that, there's the line items. We have, $800,000 in marketing. We don't bring those back to you if we are inside that $800,000 or over the overall $3 million budget or whatever. I don't have the number right in front of me, but that budget. That's what it means why y'all approve the expenditures.
Okay.
Is your budget going to be more robust? It's pretty small. It doesn't tell us much, because evidently it tells you have, in your first quarter, you're able to move $750,000 after the first quarter. So, do we know how much is going to be expendable, or, I would like it more like the city's budget.
Well, actually, the city's budget doesn't give us that type of detail on what we get for every single department. They actually had more detail in their budget than we get from all the city budgets. We don't get that type of detail that they're providing in the city budget.
In the budget presentation, you asked for, Councilmember Sherlin, you asked last year to have a budget like the cities. We did that last year. You also had that in your packet. I think it was misstated maybe that y'all didn't have that in your packet last week. It was in the packet, in the budget presentation, just like the cities. And then we gave you the additional budget that we've traditionally done over the last few years. And then there was also additional information at the end of that budget that wasn't budget. I just didn't get to explain what that last page of that packet was. And that's just a cash flow projection for the next 5 years to show you how fiscally sound the EDC is over the next 5 years, taking in projects and in and out cash flow. That was the last page of that.
Will you be able to tell us how much is unbudgeted left in your budget?
Right now, projection-wise, we do have that. Yes, sir. I think you were presented that, at least where we think we're going to end up for the year.
Okay.
I think that's in the city packet. I can go I have my copy if you want to know that number.
Let's hold off on that. Councilman Kraft, you had a follow-up? I wanted to catch you, and then.
I'll go back to when we wrap up my opinion on where we should land with the budget.
Councilman Tips.
So even with what Councilman Sherlin's saying, that you have some excess, rollover, whatever, with your new policy that you stated, you'd still have to come to us, even though it was prior budgeted, if it was over that certain amount. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. As of today, any line item or any expenditure over 15, that went into effect today, because y'all don't have to vote on the policies and procedures. So It is effective right now.
So all that rolling forward would now come under these new guidelines that if there is an expenditure above anything, or any expenditure above that amount, you'd have to come to count. It goes to your board and then the council, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So does that, Councilman Tips, does that not go a little bit more to what you were saying in the way, like, well, instead of us putting a specific category here, here, and here, we are doing this through a new policy rule? We were thinking prior to you telling us this information that we would need to create this or ask, but your board has already implemented this. So really the question might flip around, would this council now be comfortable passing the budget as is with new policies that are already in place? So let's repeat those policies. Any item that's over $50,000 as an expenditure, budgeted or not, comes to both the board and this council, or
That
only
would be a
unbudgeted?
non-budgeted item.
So did you define budgeted item versus non-budgeted?
Well, it's
item?
actually any expenditure that wasn't budgeted for would be, would have to seek council approval.
Okay.
And board approval.
One thing that we should dig into as two bodies trying to work together on this is defining budgeted item versus unbudgeted item. So if we have a marketing budget that we haven't used, can that item then be spent on something other than the marketing vendor that presented the contract for that expenditure? So I think we're seeing this with you, Neil, in some of the due process. So you would expect to be bringing something that may have a new contract, a new vendor, something that sits outside of your line item budget as approved by the council.
That's correct, yes, sir. And then the second part of that would be any line item that goes over, like say we have a line item in that marketing budget for $85,000. If we went over that to 136, then we would have to come and ask for that.
So you have a $50,000 contingency on all line item budgets.
Well, in that marketing, that 800,000 would
Before
be
they would come back.
the 800,000 would be the numbers, not those subcategories. And like in that, we're marketing support.
Okay, so we would probably want to maybe just constrain that a little bit further with some definitions so that we don't have a misunderstanding moving forward of, well, I thought this was a budgeted item. It's a different vendor than who we use for marketing, but just as an example.
Yeah, and we did talk about it. I mean, Scott can relate to this, that, it's kind of a work in progress on those policies. If we need to, we can always vote, and change them next month at the board if there's some more clarification that needs to be done. And the board was certainly willing to do that. So.
Okay. Any other questions or remarks from council before we go to Councilman Kraft?
Is there a way I can get a copy of those approved new policy measures?
Yeah, I'll email them to each one of you.
Okay. So we've got some new measures. So I'm going to ask here in a real polite way, because I know I had some little girls for a while, and they weren't bothering anybody, but it is one of those things like in a professional business meeting, I would ask, would staff be willing to engage with the nice lady in the back, and let's see if she has business here, and could we help her? Because I don't want her waiting, till 7, 8 o'clock tonight if there's something I could move up on the agenda as she's wrangling a youngster, which we've all done. So please hear me say, not a problem, but might facilitate the business meeting a little differently after we finish this item. Thank you to staff for stepping out. Any other questions for Mr. Carter here? Man, I do appreciate your board taking an initiative to get a few other things in place that I think we were taking those same steps towards. So, council, we are still under item 8D. Am I correct? No, we're on item 8D, aren't we? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're on the budget item, even though it doesn't show it that way. Can we move forward, council, with? Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Thanks, sir.
Can we move forward with a different level of comfort based on what these two constraints are? And would you have any additional constraint that you would like to put in place, or would you rather look at what Mr. Path proposed as a recommendation?
Yeah, I would prefer to see what Mr. Path proposed on paper before I made a decision on that, but I can tell you where I'm at. So as far as keeping the lights on, salary, stuff like that, I'm good with. But all other expenditures need to be approved by the board, then council, until we look at whatever policy measures we look at doing. I mean, that's, in my understanding and talking with, outside legal counsel, I mean, that is how it's supposed to operate.
Okay.
So that's where I stand.
Councilman Tips, you got an opinion?
I think I would agree that I want to see the conditions here. I do appreciate the policies that the board put forth. I think that's exactly what we're wanting, but with Mayor, that maybe some clear definitions, just to make sure that we're very clear on what is budgeted, what's not consent. But I would like to see what you guys came up with, and again, just until we get to the bottom of this. But again, I wouldn't make a decision one way or the other. I do think that they need to operate. I don't want to hamstring anything moving forward. Again, I think I referenced this last time as a political football. I don't want that to be what it is. I think we have to do our due diligence, provide the oversight, give what we feel like is best for our city. So that's kind of where I am. I will make one other request.
Yes, sir.
So this is related to this item. So I'm going to ask, because I know that Josh just referenced that, he talked to outside counsel. I know that others have talked to outside counsel on this. I'm going to make a request that anytime this is a public item, that any request we make goes back to city manager and then it's disseminated to all of us. So I don't feel like we're being a good steward of that resource. If Tom calls and asks the same questions that I'm asking, that Les is asking, that Josh is asking, it's a waste of his hours. It's a waste of our resources. So I would like to ask with this, if anybody's gotten any written opinion from our outside counsel, that it would go to city manager so that he can disseminate it to us to avoid any Open Meeting Act violation, but it would sure be helpful.
We can honor that in the way, we're going to have that protocol ready,
Okay.
I believe, for our next regular council meeting, so we'll cinch that up so that we're not mismanaging or not stewarding that fund well. And in the meantime, I do appreciate all of us communicating to Mr. Path when we're utilizing that outside counsel, and then that way we can distribute it, because I know it should be distributed to all in the way in which we're looking at policies. Councilman Simpson, I know where you're at on this issue. I also understand the discomfort with it, and I can't find a better word than unintentional consequences, which we're trying to avoid. But I am still in the weeds here. I'd like to move forward with you on board for their budget, even if it has a constraint, if we can push it up to the comfort of the council in a constrained budget, and not to hold it in that manner any longer than we absolutely have to.
I'm fine with that. Anything that can get this over and done as quickly as possible, so the AEDC and we can go about the people's business of doing what we're supposed to do as soon as possible, I would be in favor of that. And if this will expedite that, then I'm in favor of it.
Okay, I appreciate that. So, council, we are going to have an opportunity on Monday to hear specific with the AEDC's board, their additional policies, any defined terms that they could present by then to help clarify the way that those policies will be interpreted. And then also from Mr. Path, he'll be able to get these to us in a written form for you guys to review it. And then we would be ready and teed up, I think, to take action on Monday, the 30th.
Yeah, for clarification, yes, I'll rely upon Mr. Carter and ADC for the definition part of that. But then as for staff, yeah, we'll package what we prepared as some ideas, and we'll also illustrate that through the budget as been proposed. That way you'll be able to see how it looks and what we proposed. But yeah, I'll package that and get it to you.
Okay, I think I'm good on this one for today. Did you have something further?
One more. When you package that, can you, and if this is okay, can we forward that to Mr. Carter as well for his review?
Absolutely.
To see if there's any issues that might be there?
Absolutely. I can most certainly do that.
Okay.
Anything further, gentlemen?
Let me just ask one question.
Yes, sir.
before we get through this and before we go forward, I mean, is there anything else with the EDC we need to be looking at? I mean, we've been looking at things for the last year.
I don't know.
If there is, I mean, out of this, I mean, what I don't want to have happen, let's get it cleared out right now. Because in a very short period of time, and you all know about this project, we're going to have a chance to bid on probably one of the most historic military projects at Bell Helicopter that we've ever seen, producing thousands and thousands of aircraft. There are many other cities that would like to get that contract, including Fort Worth. So whatever we need to do now to make sure that we've got a good working relationship with the city, and I appreciate the phone calls that you get, Tom, and I'm sure you hear from people. I hear from people that say, what is this council trying to do to the EDC? We hear from different groups of people. They have different opinions. But I think whatever we can do moving forward to make sure that we can be in a strongest position, so when we're bidding and wanting to get projects like that, I don't want this council to be remembered for a council that jeopardized us having significant projects in this area. So if there's anything that we need to work out, let's get it worked out so we can all work in accord together moving forward. Thank you.
Real good. Let's move on from item 8E to item 8F. Councilman Sherlin, you had stated you had a future agenda item, and I wanted to see if you could clarify for Mrs. Storrs maybe what we were looking at there.
I think I would like any organization that the city is giving tax-paying money to have a quarterly report to the council here. I think it's part of our responsibility. I know we give money to neighborhood organizations, to tier zones and everything else. And I think it's just sort of our responsibility to at least see what's being done with this money. I'm not trying to hamstring anybody. I don't want to know their business. I just want to know what's going on.
If I could ask maybe a clarifying question. You're not speaking to anything that we are purchasing goods or services, anything along those manners. It's maybe those that we have an established agreement with to provide funding to. I mean, we have several component units that we work with that are all listed inside of our financial statements, and we do prepare quarterly financials for all of those that are reviewed with each of those boards, but we can certainly get copies of those to City Council as well. And I mean, the neighborhood groups, we could certainly explore any group like that we have some sort of an agreement with to provide funding to see if we can get some sort of a financial report back from those. Is that the direction you're kind of looking to go? Okay. Okay. Let me put together a list of what all entities I think this might encompass, and I can get that back through our city manager. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
I'd like to recommend that. I mean, maybe Laura and Ms. Councilor Sherman, maybe we get together offline here and talk about that and flesh that out, and we can bring back to council after that. Yeah.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take that into consideration and work towards that future agenda item and what that looks like. I tell you what, it is 4:45
Mayor,
or so.
I do have one that I'd like to add
Yes,
to
sir.
a future meeting. I think it's been several months since we passed some safety ordinances at intersections. I just kind of like to get an update on where we are on that, what intersections are part of it, because I do see, well, we all travel the same road, and I'm still seeing, on that road. So I just didn't know where we are on that, how we're enforcing that to kind of keep people in those intersections as safe as possible.
Definitely can get an update on roadway safety and maybe enforcement, how we're enforcing that. Any other future agenda items? Okay. I think at this time we're going to take a recess. Let's take 15 minutes and we'll be back here. We'll try to push through consent and non-consent. Thank you. Oh, man, that's a tough one.
I've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
The second we take someone to jail for it, another one shows up. It's. I don't know the answer for it. I do like the city ordinance that came in place. It just kind of feels like we're spinning our wheels on it.
Well, maybe there's another way, or, I mean, other than having
You don't press charges.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it does work. We'll enforce it, and like for a couple of weeks, they'll kind of shy away from it. They want you to give it to people will roll in and start doing the same thing again.
Yeah. I get off at Western every day, you know.
Oh, yes.
Good job. We'll navigate.
So, no. But citizens are asking me, said, I thought y'all passed an ordinance to be able to do that, so I just want to come and get it.
What I can do, and it's obviously over my head, I can, like an have a bunch of officers go out and let enforcement be assigned just to that. Nothing else that could help.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what comes back.
Here, let me give you my card.
Okay.
If you need anything, have any other questions,
We're going to call ourselves back into order, run the next part of our session and our meeting. We're going to look at our consent agenda, item 9. And do I have anyone that wants to request 9L off?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and pull item 9L for a little further discussion. Do I have anything else that needs to be pulled off of consent? All right. Mrs. Storrs, do you mind just maybe talk about what was noticed and what changes you're making? What their request was?
Yes, so on item, consent item 9L, I think it's L, we were approached by Mark Zimmerman with the Transformation Park Board, and he said that they have been operating along now a little over a year, and they do have a couple of volunteers. Actually, one of the members on their board is a CPA, and they have been kind of tracking some of their internal financial information and working very closely with our city staff to do all of the financial transactions for Transformation Park. So Mark said that they felt like they were at a place that they were comfortable taking over all of their fiscal agent operations. So what that entails is all of the bookkeeping, all of the payroll, the banking transactions, all of that. They prefer, if possible, to go ahead and take those on themselves. So the agreement, the city has a memorandum of understanding with Transformation Park, and one of those items is that the city would provide all of the accounting services and support. And so what that means, that's just basic fiscal agent services, and the city has been doing that at no cost since the formation of Transformation Park, which is a separate nonprofit. And that was a way that the city could kind of contribute to help get that nonprofit up and running. I have met with the CPA on their board many times, and so has our city staff. He is a retired accountant and knows what he's doing very, very well. His wife did payroll services for her entire career, so they are very well suited to take this on, and my understanding is they're looking to donate their services to Transformation Park. So the city, we certainly do have our fair share of work going on with everything related to the city and the other entities we support, and so we would be comfortable turning over all of those fiscal agent services to Transformation Park. So I worked with Brian, our city attorney, to come up with an amendment to this memorandum of understanding. And so there is a section in this MOU that talks about, it talks about what Transformation Park is going to provide and then what the city of Amarillo is going to provide. And so I wanted to just, if I could, just briefly talk about some of the other things that the city of Amarillo is going to continue providing to Transformation Park. And this is really associated with the night shelter portion that Transformation Park will be running on behalf of the city. And so the city, it says that the city will provide provision of all utilities, property insurance. It said accounting services and support, so we're asking to remove that. It said we would provide legal services and support. Actually, we have not done any of that because they have an attorney they've been working with that's been donating his services. And so we have not used any city legal services up to this point. So we asked if that would be okay to remove that as well, since they're doing their own. And so those are the two provisions that we would recommend removing. It also is requiring that the city provide information technology services and support, major maintenance and upkeep assistance, and support with buildings and infrastructure. In-kind support as needed, including the use of city-owned property as the location of the day center and night shelter. And then assistance with promoting the availability of the shelter to individuals experiencing homelessness. So we're going to continue doing all of that in support of Transformation Park. The only things we are asking council to consider is removing basically the accounting, bookkeeping, payroll services, and legal services from this MOU.
So we're not pulling back any of our obligations that we
No, sir.
had previously given. We are in still full support of Transformation Park.
Yes, sir, and we are out there. Jerry has been very busy
constructing that night shelter that this council has supported financially to the tune of several $millions. That is still underway. We are on schedule to get that thing open. I'm hearing possibly no later than spring break of this upcoming year. So all of that is underway, and we are still going to support them through utilities, property insurance, IT, major maintenance and repair, all those items. The only things we would not be supporting them on because they would like to do it themselves is accounting, financial services, and legal services.
I think that's great. And the reason I brought it up is the way it read, it sort of was misunderstood and had quite a few citizens asking some questions.
Okay.
And I just wanted everybody to hear it from you that we're not pulling back anything. In fact, we're giving more to them to have their own
Control over it, essentially. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And the reason it's worded that way, and if Brian wants to weigh in, he can, is because that's how it's worded in the original MOU. So to amend it, we essentially have to use that same language that was used in the MOU. But I do see how it could create some confusion for some of our citizens. So I'm glad we got the opportunity to clear this up.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
Yes. So any other questions on this one? Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Storrs. Are we comfortable putting item 9L back on?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Would I ask for a motion for the entire consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second from place one. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. 5:11, and we have officially voted on our first thing for today. So let's keep going. 10A. Item 10A is a public hearing. I am actually going to hand this over to our Mayor Pro Tem. So on item 10A and 10B, I have a conflict of interest. So I have a customer in one of those that's currently paying my company to construct a building. And in another one, we have purchased some land in that same area. So to avoid any conflicts of interest, I'm going to step out and ask staff to come get me. And Mayor Pro Tem, it's on you for a minute.
Boy, y'all are in trouble now. Okay, Brady.
All right, good evening, Council. Item 10A is a public hearing and consideration of Ordinance 8154. This is to rezone 7.56 acres of unplotted land. This is in Potter County, Texas, in the vicinity of Western Street and Dunn Ranch Road. They are requesting the rezone from agricultural district to general retail district, and the applicant is OJD Engineering LLC for the Marsh Gwendolyn O'Brien estate. And this is a phase of the Trails at Tascosa subdivision that they had previously identified that they wanted to eventually develop with some retail and services for the residents and other subdivisions in this area. And they are now at the point where I believe they have some development projects that are in the works, and they needed to rezone to general retail. This was found to comply with city plans, place type category for the tract, in addition to the complete neighborhood scenario. And the Planning and Zoning Commission found that given that the property east of Western is zoned industrial, and then you got the Trails at Tascosa back to the west, this retail zoning would be a good transitional zoning in terms of zoning and land use to have as you go from more intense uses back to the single family to the west there. I will note that there's also additionally some green area that is on the west side of this tract that will also offer some additional buffering. So any impacts from retail activities on the single-family home should be minimal, if any. We did send public notices as required by state law. No comments have been received as of today, and the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval with a 7-0 vote.
Council, do we have any questions?
No, sir.
So on the west side of this area, what is going to be put in there? Because it looks like there's trails, the lake, that area. What's going to be put in there to buffer that retail space, or what's there with the rest of it, visually, I guess, and otherwise?
Sure. So on the west side of the property that's being rezoned, they would be required to eventually build a screening fence, and they would also have some increased setbacks along that area. So they would be set back and screened off from that green space that is part of the Trails at Tascosa.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, this is a public hearing. Do I have anybody who'd like to talk for or against ordinance 8154? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Could I have a motion, please?
I move to adopt ordinance number 8154 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Council Member 2. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, that is a 4-0 vote. Okay, Brady, you want to go into the next one?
Sure. 10B is a public hearing and consideration of ordinance 8155. This is the rezoning of lots 17 and 18 and a portion of lots 19 and 20, block 76 of Glidden and Sanborn Addition. This is located in the vicinity of Southwest 6th Avenue and Jackson Street, and they are requesting to rezone from heavy commercial district to central business district, and the applicant is Valerie Gooch for the park. The park recently announced an expansion project that they will be doing on this site, and their proposed site plan would push them over the maximum allowed lot coverage for heavy commercial district, which is 50%, and is the reason for the request. In looking at this area, both staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission noted that much of this block and blocks in this area, the sites do observe lot coverages that are over 50%, given that many of these sites were built in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s before the current zoning standards were in effect. So many of these sites already observe development standards that are in character with the development standards in Central Business District. Central Business District allows for lot coverages up to 100%, and also there is not a on-site parking requirement. So on-street parking could be utilized for properties located in Central Business District. So that's another difference between heavy commercial and Central Business District. Given that what they are requesting largely would fit with the built environment around there, and also considering that this property is in the downtown Amarillo urban design standard boundary, staff feels that this request, or the Planning and Zoning Commission also felt that this request would fit with the development characteristics found in that area. With that, we did receive one call on this request from the public notices. They just had some general questions about what the request meant, and once we explained those to them, they did not object to the item or the request. With that, the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of this item with a 7-0 vote.
Council, do y'all have any questions?
No.
Okay, this is a public hearing. If anybody'd like to come and speak on ordinance 8155 for or against, please feel free to come forward. As I don't see anybody coming, we'll close public hearing. Could I have a motion, please?
I move to approve ordinance number 8155 as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay. Somebody can get the mayor. I want him to get back in here.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. On to item 10C.
All right, item 10C is a public hearing and consideration of ordinance 8156. This is a public hearing and first reading to consider the ordinance vacating a 0.4 acre tract that is a public right-of-way. It is a 20-foot alley in the vicinity of Northeast 15th Avenue and Meir Street. It is located in Right Addition Unit Number 2, and the applicant is AAA Properties, LLC, also known as Affiliated Foods. Affiliated Foods owns the facility that is on the north side of this alley, and they have a proposed expansion project that will add additional warehouse space to this site. And with that, they would have to have a fire lane that goes around the entirety of the site, and a portion of that area is currently occupied by an unbuilt alley, an alley that was dedicated decades ago but was never constructed by the city. So that is the reason for the request. The alley does not contain any utilities, so there's not a need to retain any public utility easements. However, as you can probably see, this is on the north side of the Martin Road softball complex. Our Parks and Rec department does have a gate that is along that alley that they use to maintain those fields. So as part of this request, the applicant was agreeable to dedicating a access easement to the city. That way our Parks and Rec department could continue to access those ball fields for maintenance. So they are doing that willingly in this case. And with that, the area would essentially be a fire lane and paved drive aisle area upon development of the site if this item is approved. And given that they are granting us that easement at no cost, they are not required to provide a fair market value payment for that alley. So where they are exchanging the alley essentially and giving us an easement. With that being the case, we did send public notices as required. We just received one phone call that was just a general inquiry. No opposition was expressed. And our Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of this item with a 7-0 vote.
Real good, sir. Questions for Brady? Okay, at this time, we're going to open a public hearing on item 10C. Do I have anyone here who wants to speak for or against this item? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and would ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion. We accept ordinance 8156 as stated.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on item 10C. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 10D. We are on to our PIDs at this time. So Ms. Carrie Roberts, if you don't mind coming up here. You're going to be up for a while, so it looks like you're starting with the greenways.
I am going to start with the greenways. So thank you, Mayor, Councilman. I have not driven this yet, so bear with me. Okay. So some folks are still confused. What is a public improvement district? They confuse it with what an HOA is versus a PID. And as it states, it is a special assessment district created by a city or a county to fund and manage various improvement projects within the specific area. We do go by basically two statutes, which is the Chapter 372 of the Texas Local Government Code, and also a petition, which is generated at the beginning of the development, usually the beginning of the development stages of a PID. But sometimes an area is already developed and they request that they want their property to be a PID. So it's established to enhance the quality of life, promote economic development, attract investment within the designated district, and provide amenities beyond standard city infrastructure. Property owners within a PID are subject to assessments which are used to finance these improvements. Improvements include design landscaping, special lighting, ponds, fountains, monuments, sidewalk, streets, and pedestrian amenities. And here again, how is a PID created? So it's created by a city through a legal process that involves a petition from property owners within the proposed district. The petition is a request of more than 50% of owners of taxable real property within the defined area. The petition outlines the general nature of the proposed improvements, estimated costs, boundaries, advisory board, and assessment methods. The petition is the PID governing document. Usually there's 3 to 5 members at the beginning. It usually begins with 3 members to be on the advisory board. Then after a certain amount of time and depending on the stages within that PID, then they'll jump it up to 5 members. These are our voting members within a PID. They are an advisory board, and all of our meetings adhere to the postings and notice requirements of the Open Meetings Act. They also vote to recommend approval of the budget and 5-year service plan to City Council. Also vote to recommend the award of management contracts, maintenance contracts, and improvement contracts to the vendors. Here's you guys. The City Council will take the following actions after the advisory board's recommendations. So approve the annual assessments. City Council will vote on an ordinance that imposes a special assessment on properties within a public improvement district. The assessment will be used to fund the improvements outlined in the PID petition. Also awarding our contracts. City Council will award vendors to manage, maintain, and improve the PID area. These contracts will be awarded based on the recommendation of the advisory board and the best value for taxpayers. These are the locations of our PIDs. We do currently, we have 10 of them currently, but we're only going to be discussing, I'm sorry, I take that back. We have 11 of them, and we're only going to be addressing 9 of them. But next year, it would be the full 11. So we're going to start off with greenways. The advisory board approved the budget on June 27th of this year, and the assessments did increase just a little bit. And the total assessments for the 24-25 budget year is $962,212, and the total expenses is $947,477. And the current assessment revenue is adequate to cover maintenance costs and debt services at this time.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Good job on the presentation. We have item 10D. I would like to open a public hearing. Do I have anyone here that would like to speak on this item? Seeing no one here today, we'll close the public hearing and would ask for a motion.
1 second, Mayor. I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Before we do a motion. So I'm looking at the agenda packet. It says that y'all didn't receive any comments or anything.
So for the Greenways PID, we did receive one letter. And do I state the name? I'm not quite sure.
I wouldn't say the name.
Okay.
You should have a copy of
Yeah.
it placed on the dais.
Well, that's, yeah, so my question is there's some pretty valid concerns in this letter. And I was curious as to if y'all have reached out or
We have.
talked to that board, talked to this person.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did they have any response to it or anything?
Not at this moment. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's all I have, Mayor.
Do you have anything from your side on maybe working on this issue, or you want to engage?
Well, I mean, I was just curious as to if the board or you have talked to the citizen with you about these concerns.
Yes. In fact, a few times. And that
Okay.
was via phone and email.
Okay.
So how does it work in the PIDs if it says we have to buy our own garbage cans? Like, is that accurate?
No. For her, it is, because she resides in an area that is backed up to a construction, or I believe it's vacant property that she's backed up to, so there are no alleyways. So whenever they purchased their home, that was part of the discussion that they had with the HOA, that they were going to have to provide their own trash receptacles.
Okay. Is that normal practice?
Well, it looks like this one is scheduled to be serviced, and that it hadn't been serviced yet for the cart service. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So we'd have to see where it's at on your list.
Yeah, for 2 years. Okay. I was just curious as to if these concerns have been addressed with that homeowner.
Sure. And just for record, there's only a couple of concerns on there that really pertain to the PID.
Mm-hmm. The other typical city service
sir.
concerns?
Yes, sir.
Trash collection and whatnot? Not necessarily a PID item?
Correct.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay, well, let's see if we can work on that for her.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
No, sure.
Okay.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8157 as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second from place 3. Any further discussion on this? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item 10D passes. On to item 10E.
So this is the, do I need to read? I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I'm good.
You can just kind of go through what's on your slide.
So, Ms. Carey, I think for us, we now have done this a couple times so far.
You ready
and so,
for me just to?
No, I think we can move pretty efficiently together.
Okay.
But let's pull them up, make sure that council doesn't have any questions on maybe the plan, the expenses, and then specifically if you have anything that's a concern out of that PID or from that board, anything that you need.
Okay. So, all right. So 10E, it's Heritage Hills. The advisory board voted on June 25th to approve the budget in the 5-year service plan. There was no change as far as the increase per square foot. And the total assessments is $459,287, and the total expenses was $315,444. And the assessment revenue is adequate to cover maintenance costs, debt services at this time.
Very good. Any questions for Mrs. Roberts? Okay, at this time, we'll open a public hearing. Do I have anyone here who'd like to speak for or against item 10E? Okay, seeing no one, will close the public hearing and would ask for a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8158 as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on item 10E. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? On to item 10F.
Okay, so here we have Pinnacle, and again, the PID Advisory Board voted on July 10th to approve the budget and 5-year service plan. There was no change as far as the price for the square footage, and the total assessments is $122,594. Total expenses is $98,726. So given timing of the improvements in the future, current assessment revenue are more than adequate to cover the maintenance as well as establish adequate reserves.
Any questions on item 10F, gentlemen? Okay, at this time, we'll open a public hearing. Do I have anyone who would like to speak for or against this item? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8159 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? On to item 10G.
Okay, so Point West, that's our business park PID. And the board voted on July 16th, and it passed unanimously. Anyway, it passed. So there is no change in the assessments. It's split evenly between the commercial business owners. And the total assessments is $52,000. There's no change from last year. And the expenses did increase a little bit to $71,619. But currently, the assessment revenue is adequate to cover maintenance costs as well as maintaining adequate reserves.
Questions on this one, guys? At this time, we'll open a public hearing. Do I have anyone who would like to speak for or against item 10G? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion, we accept ordinance 8160 as stated.
Second.
I have a motion and a second from place 2. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? On to item 10H, Mrs. Roberts.
Okay, we have Quail Creek PID. It's one of our smaller PIDs, and the board approved unanimously July 16th. And the assessments total this year of $11,600, and for the expenses was $13,111. And the current assessment will cover maintenance and cost at this time.
Very good. Any questions on Quail Creek? Okay, we'll open a public hearing at this time. Do I have anyone here to speak on item 10H? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8161 as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? On to item 10I.
Okay, Town Square. The budget passed June 20th,
And the assessments, there's no change as far as square footage, the price per square footage, and the total is $195,693. Total expenses is $390,441. And this does include a $200,000 developer reimbursement. Given timing of the improvements in the future, current assessment revenues are more than adequate to cover maintenance and establish adequate reserves.
Question on this one, gentlemen? Okay, we will open a public hearing. Do I have anyone here that would like to speak for or against? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing on item 10I. Ask for a motion.
Move to adopt ordinance number 8162 as presented.
Second. I have a motion and a second from place one. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? On to item 10J.
All right, this is Tutbury. This is another one of our smaller PIDs, and the advisory board passed the budget and 5-year service plan on July 10th. Assessments totaled $28,000, and the expenses totaled $26,876. And current assessment revenue is adequate to cover maintenance costs at this time.
Very good. Any questions on this one? At this time, we'll open a public hearing. Do I have anyone here that would like to speak for or against this item? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and ask that we move.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8163 as presented.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Item 10K.
Okay, this is Vineyards. The board approved the budget and 5-year service plan June 25th. Assessments totaling $21,675, and total expenses are $26,245. So, given timing of the improvements in the future, current assessment revenues are more than adequate to cover maintenance and establish adequate revenue.
Very good. With no questions on this one, we'll open a public hearing. Do I have anyone that'd like to speak for or against this item? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and ask if we can move.
Move to adopt ordinance number 8164 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second from place 4. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, on to item 10L.
So this is our colonies, and the board approved June 18th, and the assessments are totaling $1,431,605. Total expenses are $1,413,258. Current assessment revenue is adequate to cover maintenance costs and debt service payments at this time. And I did receive 2 correspondence letters in reference to the assessments, and I believe you have those.
Any questions on that letter, gentlemen, or anything in the colonies PID?
No, just the colony, their PID board got a copy of this as well, correct?
Absolutely.
And they've talked with them.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the appropriate way for a resident that has a question regarding the disbursement of the PID, or it would be to go to the PID board?
That would be the best way. However, they just write letters or call
Typically.
us. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
And these were given as well to FIMC, who holds the management contract for the colonies. And we are coming up with better ways to communicate to the residents to let them know when our PID advisory board meetings are being held.
How much is the increase?
As far as the square footage, there was none. And I'll have to, can I get back with you on that? Okay.
Any further questions, gentlemen? Okay, at this time, we'll open a public hearing on item 10L. Do I have anyone here who would like to speak on this item? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and would ask for a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8165 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 10L passes. We're getting close.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Roberts. Item 10M is our last item up here, and so Miss Missy's coming up here to talk us through our Motorola agreement.
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon. So what we're looking for is consent to proceed with an agreement with Motorola for services. It would cover our regional radio system that supports not only the city but also some other entities in the region as well. It provides two-way communication for individuals, groups, and also cross agencies for emergency and non-emergency operations. The agreement supports 18 city departments, public safety, public works, and the airport are our largest users of the systems, and then we have several other departments, parks, and others that take advantage of the system. It also supports other agencies and businesses like the counties, the states, hospital, education, and some other local businesses like BNSF and Bell Systems. So the agreement covers hardware, software, support, and maintenance for our core equipment plus 3 towers that we have in the city. The coverage is for 5 years. It would begin October 1. It covers the software and hardware upgrades and maintenance. So anytime they make changes to the software, we're afforded the opportunity to take advantage of those upgrades. If we have any equipment that fails, they will replace the equipment at no cost. Well, I say at no cost. It's obviously rolled into the agreement itself. Every 2 years, they will replace all end-of-life equipment that's in the system. So they will come in and do a full or complete upgrade of the system to make sure it's operating optimally. This year, there's a couple of things that we're adding. So one, we're adding managed detection and response, which is a security service where they're continually monitoring live what is happening in that environment, and then they take action if they see any kind of suspicious activity. And then we're also adding remote support services. It's reboot services, so they will be on the hook to apply all of the patches and software upgrades and be on the hook to reboot those systems and ensure everything comes up online. Historically, in the past, we've been the ones to do that. So the cost for the agreement is right at $4 million. That is a 5-year agreement, so we're looking at spending $800,000 annually with them. Core maintenance and support makes up $3 million of that. Microwave maintenance and support is $385K of that. The MDR services is $585K, and then the remote support is $48,000. So that's essentially the agreement.
Questions for Mrs. Laird?
As these prices go up, I'm sure they're shared with the counties as well, those increases?
Yes,
What's
and
that
so
agreement look like?
the counties also, they provide hardware for services in their area, and then everything ties into this system as well. So we have interlocal agreements.
Is there cost shares within that?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have radio. It's called a radio communication service agreement. Now, with the new services that are being added, we're going to have to renegotiate all of those. So that'll be our next step if you guys approve. That will be our next step, and then billing generally goes out for services in the December timeframe for payment in January.
Okay. I imagine they have an idea of how much the increased cost will be before they go to budget.
Yes. So the other thing that's worth mentioning too, the core maintenance and support, when you compare it to what we were spending before, so the initial agreement that we had with them was when we did an RFP and they installed the Motorola system itself. And so they included 5 years of maintenance with that. Since that time, this is for a renewal for an additional 5 years of the infrastructure. And so what we've seen is a 31% increase over what it was when the original agreement was struck in 2017. That is on par with what we've seen since COVID with the increase of cost of goods and services in the IT industry. And then the rolling in the microwave maintenance and support agreement, it was a separate agreement, rolling that one in, we have an 8% savings that we were able to accomplish with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Missy.
Thanks.
Would ask for a motion on item 10M.
I move to award a 5-year renewal contract for item 10M to Motorola Solutions in the amount of $3,999,990.22.
Second.
Motion and a second on 10M. Any further discussion on this one? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item 10M passes with a 5-0 vote.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask a question. I missed it earlier. Mr. Fisher came and asked us to put something on a discussion item.
An agenda?
I didn't know if we wanted to follow through with that or.
Yeah, so I'll give you just kind of my side of that update. Since this isn't a noticed item, we won't get into a discussion, but in a future requested agenda item, staff's currently working on that to see maybe where a property line is or isn't. And I would like to just allow staff to do what they're already doing to see if they can satisfy that customer and citizen. And then if it's something that needs to come back up, I'll be happy to put it on.
Hey, thank you.
Yep, appreciate it. Anything else we got to handle today? All right. Anyone want to make one more motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
You're adjourned. Thank you.
Vote on that.